Hey friends, Andy here, and on this week's episode of Andy and Friends podcast, I have a very exciting guest. But in case you don't know what you're watching or why you're here, this is a podcast where I talk to people who I would call friends or acquaintances or people I've met online that do interesting things that I want to glean some lessons from, usually around wealth building or entrepreneurship or maybe crypto or investing or whatever. If I'm interested in it, then maybe you will be too. And today is pretty cool because I have Colin Landforce, who is a serial entrepreneur, mainly across consumer products. He's done everything from cannabis, guns, drones, skincare. I'm sure there's a bunch of questions just in that section right there. And he has a Twitter following, a TikTok following, he has his own podcast. Twitter's how I got connected with Colin. And maybe the most important thing is he has the name of like a space ranger or a superhero. I don't know. He's got the @Landforce on Twitter. I mean, what is cooler than that? So, Colin, thanks for being here. Excited to connect with you.
Thanks for having me, dude. It's exciting to finally actually talk after all these years of DMs.
Yeah, it is. It is funny though. It has. I was thinking about that just before I was kind of writing the notes and stuff. We have talked or connected via Twitter and kind of grown on Twitter at the same time over like maybe close to 2 years now. Maybe it has been 2. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
That's wild. What do you think about Twitter today?
Man, I don't think a lot about it. I think there's a lot of people worried about it. I'm disappointed. I'm an Elon fan, so I'm disappointed that it's been such a dumpster fire. I think in the bigger timeline, I think he'll do very good things. I just don't see why it had to all happen this way, with it just being a total mess. And I don't know if you've noticed that the little icon notification that tells you how many notifications you have no longer shows a number, which apparently is not intentional and just an open bug. I don't think it had to be this way, but I like Twitter in general. It's got its own corner of the internet.
Yeah, I still like Twitter. I have lost, I would say, a fair amount of my passion and like excitement for it. Like tweeting and writing tweets and all this has become a little bit mundane and routine to me. And I'm trying to now think about how I can make that exciting again. And maybe you've encountered similar things. And also just seeing like, I don't know. At one point, it's like build an audience on there and you can do things with it and that's fun, but also sharing thoughts. But then some parts of it just like audience building for just audience building's sake. And I don't know. I've got mixed thoughts on Twitter, but I still like it and I'm still here and I'm excited to see what happens next. But the dumpster fire at least is entertaining to watch, right?
Yeah, certainly. And I'm right there with you. It's been it's been interesting to see the transition where like the only threads really going viral these days are like, 21 books to save your life and a bunch of Chrome extensions and Excel hacks, which is super disappointing. I'm in a similar boat, but for me, it's kind of, I don't know, I've stopped overthinking it so much and just like letting it rip much more on Twitter, which means that I have plenty of tweets that I guess are like not popping, not very high engagement, but I always find that those tweets are the most productive for connecting with people and creating more meaningful relationships, besides just big numbers. So who knows? It's a trade-off. It's kind of like secondary to video and TikTok, and I know you can relate to that since you're a video first guy, which I'm trying to figure out how to be. It's difficult.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We can definitely talk about that. Yeah, Twitter is one of those things where I kind of have one foot on either side of the fence right now. Where I'm still writing some just like Twitter content that can get likes and retweets and stuff like that to varying degrees of success, and then also tweeting stuff that I just happen to be interested in and watching that not get any of the same response. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting conversation to keep having, or at least thinking about. Something that's very important to me and something I'm trying to talk more about on my main channel, but then also the podcast, is just entrepreneurship in general. I haven't had maybe the big success you have had in entrepreneurship and startups and things like that, but I have been a entrepreneur for basically forever, since elementary school. Started my first business in elementary school. So I have a definite interest and love and passion there. So first question is like, did you do a 9-to-5 job? Like when did the entrepreneurship start for you and why?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't want to get wrapped up in, big success. I think there's a lot of downsides, upsides and downsides to doing like larger scale businesses. And honestly, a 400 person business is a nightmare. And not something I will probably do again. But What a question. I think I've kind of always had the business tick. My dad is not an entrepreneur. He's a business person. He was an executive all when I was growing up. And he actually has made several comments to me over the years of like, I don't know where the hell you got this tick and knack for just like risk taking and figuring things out and building. But it was there all throughout my childhood. And then for me, the first like big expression of it was my high school shut down our dances because they were too rambunctious. And we needed to still have dances. And so the very first thing was going and finding a space and throwing a party. And I definitely cut my teeth throwing parties and doing that type of stuff, when I was like, I don't know, 16, 17, 18, 19, kind of in there and into college. It's kind of how I paid my way through college. And that was the beginning for me. And then I guess I've had one actual adult job, and that was a freelance client of mine where I finally kind of said like, okay, let's kind of put the other clients aside and let's focus on one for a while. And that was a consumer drone. So like you're probably familiar with Phantoms. The DJI Phantom was we went after it for like an 18-month run with a company called 3D Robotics, and that was my one adult job. And when that came to an end was when the cannabis stuff got big and took off, and then here we are, 7 years later. So yeah,
that's cool. I remember the heyday of. I think I may be familiar with that drone. I was big into drones. My first drone was like a Phantom 3 or something from DJI. Yeah. And just a quick side tangent, drones are one of these things that's just unbelievably amazing to me. It's like you rewind the clock 20 years, 30 years, and to get aerial shots like we get today that are so commonplace, you had to have a giant helicopter with a stabilized rig and a camera hanging off the thing, and it cost you tens of thousands or more, per hour or whatever to operate this. Yeah. And now you go on DJI, you buy a Mavic Mini for $400, you put it in the sky and you push a button, it does this beautiful cinematic orbit. It's just what a time to be alive, right?
I think like we can nerd out on this for sure because like I think it's still so underappreciated. Like that, what you just said, you don't need a helicopter and a rig and a 5-person team. These are literally like $100,000 shots, 15 or 20 years ago. And now it is, you're missing a little bit when you use like a Mavic, when you use like a Mavic, but it's pretty incredible. Our product was solo. So it was the black drone. It was right around Phantom 3 in that timeline. And we were very software oriented. So I think we were the impetus for DJI going down that path where you have all the automated stuff now. So we had features called like cable cam where you set 2 endpoints and a pan and just run it. And again, like take that drone from being like a camera in the sky to being like a rig that you could put anywhere in the sky and just automate and do a lot of the stuff where you have like perfect pans and pull-ups and all kinds of stuff. And it really is incredible. I'm not into photo and video anymore like I was then, but it's wild. I have like a little Mavic Pro, and it's just even looking from when I was doing it 7 years ago to that, which is probably 3 years old now, like what I've got in this little tiny, like you can't even call it a bag. It's like a pouch you could throw over your shoulder. It's pretty incredible. And the lens sizes that are getting on those things, it's wild.
Yeah, it is crazy. Yeah, and I'll watch, older shows from the 80s and 90s, and you'll see these aerial city shots and stuff, and especially when they had lower budgets, they didn't have the cinema budgets, they had jankier helicopter shots, and it's just ugly, and it just looks bad, and it's not smooth, and you're like, and now anybody can put a drone in the air and get something that looks 10 times better than that, It's a crazy, crazy world. And all that stuff is just getting better. I mean, what are the phones of a decade from now going to look like? Are we going to have phones? We're going to have chips in our head. We're going to have augmented reality glasses. Like, what is it all going to be wearables? Like, what is, this the pace of technology is incredible, even though it is like little stepstones. But yes, when you look backwards at it, it's kind of amazing.
It's bonkers. I mean, the innovation cycles with phones, which are really just cameras now, like, I mean, these companies you are forced to just keep iterating and coming out with new stuff. And it's shocking like it's exhausting, honestly. I'm glad I'm not working in brands like that anymore that have to innovate like that. We used to joke when we were doing the drone stuff, like imagine if we were doing like washing machines, because those brands, Maytag is under the same pressures, right? They need innovation so they can run marketing cycles around their new stuff, and people are sitting around trying to make washing machines interesting and compelling. What a nightmare. Anyway.
Yeah. How do you make a washing machine sexy? That's a good question. So we covered the drones. Like maybe I don't know what if you would talk a little bit about cannabis or guns or skincare. Like tell me a little bit more about your story of entrepreneuring on a serial basis.
Yeah, serial. Yeah, well, when you asked me and I kind of rattled off those, I had a realization, I guess probably 5 or 6 years ago when I was trying to find a common thread across everything that I do. And it did kind of end up being like, I've worked so much in these like regulated consumer spaces to varying degrees, right? Another one is just like medical devices and all that. And all that happened by happenstance, or it was not intentional. But I look back and have found that as like a common thread across these things. And the interesting thing about it is just that like so much that you take for granted in a normal business, is like laborious or has to be thought about, or hoops need to be jumped through for a lot of those things. And for me, that culminated in cannabis, right? A lot of that stuff was, I kind of ended up being entrepreneur for hire for clients early on in my career, just not really knowing what I wanted to do, but knowing that I had a skill set and could do things. And then when that really came to fruition for me with the cannabis space, and some guys that I was growing up with, some guys I grew up with, were moving flower to dispensaries in like, late medical, right before rec in Oregon, right? All these rules come down on a federal basis. If you're not already, all these rules come down on a state by state basis if you're not familiar. So we're in Oregon, based in Portland, and this was late medical. So it's very, very gray. But we were building a retail network with bulk flower, like more or less commoditized bulk flower, knowing that if we had a network of dispensaries that we could ultimately do anything, not knowing what those products would end up being. So if you fast forward 5 or 6 years, among other things, we launched, I think 6 or 7 brands and then killed 4 or 5 of them over that period, just in terms of like iterating, figuring out what works, what doesn't, and have done products in pretty much every category in cannabis at a million unit type of scale across several states, which has its own intricacies, to say the least. And so I've spent the last 6 years now in cannabis CPG doing that.
So one of the things you just said is this something that is this one of the things that it makes you excited about entrepreneurship, that you love about entrepreneurship, the iterating, figuring out what works, what doesn't, and then like changing directions and stuff? Is that something you would call a top entrepreneur quality?
Gosh, I know for me personally, like I'm great at starting. And it takes a disproportionate amount of energy for me to manage. I'm not a great manager, but I'm a great starter. So like when we talk about that and, trying new product lines and new brands, like that's kind of right up my wheelhouse, just because we're ripping and running and shooting shots and seeing what we can make. And I'm also very, very tactical. That's kind of the only way I operate in things. Like my general thought is you can't manage something. It's interesting. You see so much like delegation and outsourcing porn these days. And, I outsource and delegate with the best of them, but I generally think that it's very inefficient to manage things that you aren't intimately familiar with. And so, I'm never going to do anything that I don't know every single detail of, and I'm certainly not going to hire out anything that I'm not that level of familiar with. So in terms of a trader characteristic, I think just like a knack for like obscene level of detail around things. And I say that as not a particularly detail-oriented person in general, but it's just like a fire to understand how things work is kind of like been my driving force and and wanting to know how things work and then ultimately how they can be made better, of course.
Yeah. One of the things I like about your TikToks that I've watched is that like tactical element. Because you're very good about like breaking it as like, hey, here's a guy who just did this thing. Here's a product I would suggest he does, and here's how I would do it. And then you like go
Right.
through the steps. Is that something that you get a lot of joy out of, like figuring that aspect of it out?
I mean, I think like especially content wise, that is my most. That's my that's the content I like making. I have decision fatigue on that, where like the only thing holding me back from making like 10 of those a day is just like deciding what to talk about. But yeah, exactly. I think all that stuff is like so second. It's very second nature to me. I think normal humans get value out of it because it is detailed. But I really like just like kind of breaking it down into the simplest of terms. Like, I think it's so easy to look at like, creating a product and importing it from China or finding a manufacturer stateside or whatever that may be as like this huge mountain to climb. But you climb the mountain by taking the first step, and that's almost always Google. And I don't know anything that I didn't just like figure out by going and doing it. Right. So I'm not sure where we're going with that, but yeah, I love just piecing it together for myself and for people, because it's not more complicated than that, unfortunately.
I mean, the only thing really truly different than, someone who's starting their own thing and doing all these things is we just Googled the things and learned them, or, taught ourselves these things, and we didn't let the how do I do this or how do I do that be the end of that road. Instead, we actually investigated what that thing was. It's really, I mean, how much information is available for free on the internet right now if you're just curious enough to, consume it all.
Yeah, not to mention, sitting on Google, but also like in other people. I was actually just reminiscing the other day about the first time that I needed a freight forwarder and a customs broker. And so this is like the first time I'm importing something that's not just like showing up from DHL. And my manufacturer's like, great, who's your freight forwarder? And it was this moment of like, oh shit, this just got real. This is like we're bringing in a half container, not just like a few boxes. And I was like, to my factory, I was totally transparent. Like, this is the biggest shipment I've brought in. I don't have a freight forwarder. Could you introduce me to someone? And she was like, of course. And she introduced me to some nice lady in Chicago. And I called her and I said, look, I've never done this before. I'll get you whatever you need from me. I'd love it if you, take it easy on me and walk me through this. And, 10 days after those initial phone calls and conversations, I had a freight forwarder and a customs broker, and I knew how that shit worked. How else are you going to get there? And the woman on the other end of the line had a great time explaining to me how all this stuff worked. I'm sure she deals with, grumpy people that have been doing it for 30 years all day. So
that's refreshing to hear, because there's so much of like TikTok and YouTube and Twitter and stuff that is such like hustle culture, fake it till you make it. And if, and a lot of those people would tell you, if you get asked that question, it's like, you just say, yeah, hang on a second, let me just get it for you. And then you just pretend like and you look it up after the fact. But so many people who just want to help you out, and if you just ask and you're open about like, I don't know, I'd love to learn this with you.
Yeah, I need you. You're gonna have to walk me through this. It's my first time. It's like, boom. It was a great experience, honestly.
That's cool. So I want to talk a little bit more about this entrepreneurship and stuff and the motivation behind it. Like maybe you've already talked about it. Maybe it is that starting or whatever, but like, what is it that makes you keep coming back to doing your own thing, and and that hasn't let you be swayed to go get a 9-to-5 job or get a traditional job?
I think I don't have the disdain for a job like a lot of, I'm not sure that entrepreneurs feel that way, but a lot of like hustle porn is centered around. For me, and this is actually a realization coming out of, as an entrepreneur, focusing on one thing for a very extended period of time, which is this business letterman that turned into Unrivaled. I'm miserable when I'm focused on one thing. So like a job seems like not a recipe for success from a like happiness and having fun standpoint. But I think that like my takeaway there is like, I'm also miserable entrepreneuring on one thing. Right. So, I just need to be in a position where I can kind of like be doing anything that I want to do, which manifests itself as like making a bunch of stuff, and I definitely, I also appreciate that like the easiest way to lock in your income and kind of like cap your upside is to like be dependent on said 9 to 5, even if it's a great one. So I definitely drink all the Kool-Aid around diversifying that stuff, and that helps certainly. But for me, it's just like I'm here to make stuff, and entrepreneurship is kind of like the way that you do that professionally.
Yeah. I'm a lot of the same way where doing the same thing over and over again is very boring, and doing my own thing, especially this whole like online creator thing or whatever, is wonderful because one day I'm tweeting, next day I'm making YouTube videos, recording a podcast, doing the TikTok thing, which I need to get better about that. We can talk about that.
Let's
Or creating a community, or take your pick. I have something that I can like turn my attention to any given day, or start something completely separate or whatever. I'm not tied to a specific thing, and that's really exciting to me. And I think, and all the people we've talked to that are entrepreneurs or you think are similar in these ways, do most people share that trait? Scattered?
I'd like to say no, just because there's so much like conventional entrepreneurship knowledge that's like focus, and the One Thing is a book that it's about focus, and I remember reading it and kind of having this realization that's like, everybody wants to preach how important focus is, but like focus is like can be contextualized around anything, right? Like you could ask me like what kind of stuff I do. I could say, oh, I'm all over the board on consumer products, or I could say, oh, I'm focused specifically on highly regulated consumer products, right? It's all bullshit at the end of the day, and I'm knowing that I'm not happy with a more singular track is like all that really matters for me. I think that a lot of entrepreneurs are super successful because of their ability to do that. But the measuring stick for me isn't like the size of a company or dollars. It's like literally just like, is this sick? Yes. Okay, great. Let's do it.
I like that. Can anyone be an entrepreneur?
I think no, definitely not. I like the ethos of like, yes, anybody can figure this stuff out, but I think that a lot of people just like aren't wired for it. And maybe like can't isn't the word, but like it seems like a miserable existence for somebody that is just like not set up for the risk tolerance, and not a risk tolerance in terms of like lose a bunch of money, but just like you have to be like, when you don't have W-2 income, like you're just wired differently if that's not an issue to you, right? Like my wife is not a fan of that concept, right? But she's been dealing with me for 15 years or whatever. So she's gotten used to it. But I think you're the same way in that, you're probably the flip side of having multiple streams of income and doing all these things is that you haven't had the paycheck that's every other Friday, until the end of time, for better or for worse.
And I think it's the for better for worse part that, there's many things that excite me about this path in life, but I am someone who likes, and I don't want to be like stereotypical or trite or cliche about it, but like the extreme responsibility, lots of self-responsibility. The aspect of entrepreneurship that I love is that it's like, it's up to me. It's like if I mess this whole thing up and I fail and I don't get the paycheck at the end of the month because I didn't do the things I was supposed to do, well, then that's totally my fault. But if I kick ass and I deliver on these things and it's higher than what I was expecting, and then the next month it grows even more, that's also me. And that's a big chunk of the fun of this for me.
Yep. I completely agree. And, taking that to an extreme, again, for better or for worse, like, dude, I do not watch the news. I've got every like politics related keyword muted on my timeline. I just don't I do not know what's going on with that stuff. And kind of the same goes for like all the stock market, the impending recession that I think I've heard about, but like, I just like, I am in my box worried about the things that are within my circle of influence, and neither of those things are it. And I'm happy here.
Avoiding the news seems to be a life hack to happiness these days.
Yeah.
If you're not paying attention to current events, you can be a lot less stressed out.
Yep.
Yeah. In the type of stuff I'm doing with the, finance content and stuff, I have to be glued to some of it to some degree. But I often still try to miss out on as much of it as I can because it just gets so tiring. I mean, I'm in the crypto space, and I'm sure maybe you've been smart and you have FTX muted on Twitter, but
I do now. Yeah. God, I think it's interesting, but it's like, okay, I'll like grab a dose of it, but like I can't dwell on this.
It's interesting for a while, but not for every single day, all day long, for weeks on end.
Yeah.
Just tiring.
Right. In a kind of bizarre turn of events, I have muted the word Twitter on my Twitter account, just because I'm sick of seeing all these takes about how it's the end of everything, and Elon Musk is the devil, and I don't know. Stay in your cube.
It's all it's all made up. None of it's real. Twitter is a made up software thing that didn't exist a certain amount of time. It exists on the internet, and if it vanished, we assign so much value and importance to so much stuff that especially if you zoom out on a cosmic level, does anyone give two shits about if Twitter fails or succeeds or what happens on the platform? Really?
Yeah. Yeah. It's rough. And there's so much outrage around it too, that adds a whole nother layer, right? It's like everything is the end of the world.
So while on the topic of Twitter, what is, and maybe the answer is what you've already said, TikTok or something, but what is the social platform you're the most excited about right now?
TikTok is crazy. I think LinkedIn should not be ignored, and I have thoughts on that too, but TikTok is, so first of all, I casually used TikTok and thought I understood it. And it wasn't until I was like, okay, I'm gonna make things and put them on TikTok that it really hit me. But I think that outside of having an incredible UX, which is great for consuming, right? It is serving up exactly what you want to see or what you're telling it that you want to see. I think that the UX on a whole is democratizing content creation, right? It's like iPhone plus TikTok UX makes anybody able to create a visually stimulating and compelling video, which is incredible. And then I think the real sauce is the algorithm, and it's shocking to me that the other social platforms don't kind of take this approach. But on TikTok, what I've found is if you show up and give it content, that algorithm's job is to give it some eyeballs and see if they're interested in it. Like the worst piece of content that I've posted, starting from 0 on TikTok, has 300 views on it because the algorithm is going to give it some eyeballs and see if it catches it all. And you can't say that about Twitter. You can't say that about Instagram. None of these other algorithms take that approach. And it's totally bizarre. It's totally bizarre because they live off of content, and their business is more or less incentivizing a creator to create content for their platform. Why would they not, make that algorithm's central job to give stuff a shot to make it easier to build an audience? It's bizarre. But TikTok is, I think, something that TikTok and LinkedIn both have in common is there's just this huge, the supply and demand of content is heavily weighted towards demand, right? So if you show up and give it content, it's going to work, generally speaking.
TikTok's discovery engine is mind-blowing.
It's crazy.
Yeah, Twitter, if you're a first-time Twitter user, you hop on there, you're tweeting into the abyss, into a black hole of nothingness.
It's wild. It's crazy how dark it is on those first days on Twitter.
If you don't make buddies with somebody who's going to retweet you, or you're not commenting under other people's stuff, you will never, not never, but close to never get traction on the platform.
Yep. It's crazy.
TikTok, 0 followers, following 0 people, show up, post one TikTok, your first one ever, and it happens to be interesting, it could blow up.
Yep. My second video got 100, it's not viral by any means, but got 120,000 views on my second video. And a part of that is look, the algorithm like they understand that if I come back to create more content, that's good for their platform.
Yeah.
So those first few posts, they're juicing them and giving me the dopamine so that I come back and do it more. It makes sense, but it works for everybody.
Yeah. My very first TikTok ever has 180,000, I think, views on it. First on the platform, me, I'm like, oh, okay. And now, to my discredit, I kind of stopped on TikTok. I'm getting back on the horse, but right away, it's like it just pumping my dopamine. I'm like, what is this thing? I got to get on here.
Yep, it worked. Yep.
Yeah. So, what is the opportunity with TikTok? I mean, obviously, there's the eyeball opportunity, but like, how are you capitalizing on that?
Well, I think it's not different than it is for any of these platforms, and then I'd extend it to like, you know, Google and SEO in general, which is basically just like if you show up and create content about a thing, I think there's a massive opportunity. I think that that is the seed for especially consumer product businesses of the future, but like really any business is audience, right? Is what we're talking about. So that is the opportunity on TikTok. I think on TikTok, it's more attainable than on any other platform, quickly at least, just because of how it's built. But it's the same thing everywhere. TikTok is interesting in that so many people are there and ready to buy. I think more so than on Instagram. I also read some stat that I think TikTok users are like 30+% more likely to buy a premium product, which is interesting. So there's a lot of, I'm not sure we call it buy intent, but certainly shopping intent on TikTok. People are thinking about it. But really the opportunity is platform agnostic, and that is make content. It'll be worth your while. And that's kind of, I've been tweeting more and more about that lately. That is a big part of like just what I'm talking about in general on TikTok. Because I think it is agnostic of niche, category, agnostic of whether it's B2B or B2C. If you create a personal brand for yourself and create content around a topic, you will attract eyeballs and good things can come of it.
Now, I know you just said that a lot of these fundamentals are agnostic of the niche, but are there any specific ones that you see a lot of opportunity in, or a lot of ability to grow fast or create products in?
Well, so absolutely TikTok, like especially. I mean, I think 30 days on TikTok, it has not worked like this for me yet. Like I've been, I'm struggling with TikTok, candidly. But like, I think 30 days of making TikTok videos about a niche can like change everything for a person. And I don't, that sounds so dramatic to say, but I think it is, I think it's absolutely the case. But I think TikTok is the fastest place for that. But it's true on every channel. The language that you're speaking on the different platforms is all different, right? Like I'm pretty good at writing for Twitter, particularly Threads, and that has not translated at all for me on TikTok. The way that you hook people, the way you engage people. Obviously, there's a difference between like written word and video. But I think my hooks are almost like a little bit too boomer for TikTok. So I've been trying to figure that out, and it's so tactical and it's so detailed. And then by the same right, my wife fired up her TikTok account for her e-com business after like hardly using it for weeks. Made a objectively like bad production value TikTok video, and there's some underlying genius to it, and it went viral. Did like 4 million views in over a weekend, and drove like $30,000 in sales. So I don't know. You can't get too bogged down in the tactics on any of this stuff. TikTok is what you should be paying attention to.
So if I'm somebody who's listening to this right now, I'm like, okay, I want to do something online where I start an audience. Eventually I offer some kind of product or whatever. Okay, I'm gonna start on TikTok. What are a couple niches where you maybe see opportunity? And then once they start creating content on there, what's the next step? Should they create a newsletter and drive traffic there? Should they go and create the product and drive traffic directly to it? Like what should they do?
Yeah, so I think like starting from zero, I go TikTok and email simultaneously. I think interior design is interesting because it's there's a ton of, I think the first step for a lot of people is curating, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the early content you did was around cinema and movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
My first YouTube channel, yeah.
Right. So you know, the early creation is basically curation and commentary, right? So I like interior design because there's so much beautiful content out there that you can layer on commentary and curate. And then anybody that's interested in that stuff there's not buy intent built in, but people that are looking at that are like shopping subconsciously, right? And so when you have a niche that's based around buying, I think that's always a win. And generally speaking, any niche that I'm interested in, that's kind of a qualifier. Examples of that are, I mean, I've tweeted some about this trading card site that I had that's a longer story, right? But in trading cards, that is an entire niche and hobby that is centered around buying the trading cards, which means that there's infinitely more ways to like get some action on those purchases than something like, I don't know, an interest in art or something, right? So buy intent is a big one. And interior design is specifically one that I've been looking at a lot lately.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm interested in just the idea of niches that have, buy intent baked in, or ability to sell to people immediately based on what the thing is, but also ancillary, like side things that you don't think about but make so much sense. Like I have a buddy of mine who's very successful on Airbnb. He has a YouTube channel about Airbnb, and yeah, you can like refer people to Airbnb, and there's good referral money in that. You can sell info products on how to be successful in Airbnb. But an angle I hadn't thought of, and he's killing it at that. I'm like, oh, duh, makes tons of sense. Is he makes videos about how you furbish your Airbnbs and how you like what are the must-have Airbnb products and stuff, and that's all Amazon affiliate links, and he just rakes it in on that stuff for people who want to start. And then how do I fill my space?
Right.
There's some really cool opportunities where it's like there's a core content, but then what are the things you need to make that thing happen if you're gonna be successful at it? They're really interesting.
And I like that especially too, because I think affiliate is a great way to validate. I'm not sure that use case really makes sense, but affiliates programs are a great way to validate that you have a customer that's willing to pay for something. I kind of did this breakdown on these women, these twins that they review basically like Lululemon knockoffs and like kind of like generic or Amazon versions of a bunch of these big brands on TikTok, of course. And their business is powered by Amazon affiliate, right? But when they're doing that, and if they drive 1,000 people to look at, a Lululemon Amazon version or generic brand, they're capturing so much data about what people are actually buying from that brand, right? To where then if they wanted to ultimately, spin up an athleisure brand, they're going to know that like the black pair sells 3-to-1 compared to the gray, right? And that the Airbnb play may be one place where that's a little clunky and doesn't apply, but in general, I think that's a great way to use affiliate programs before investing in an actual product.
That's such a brilliant way to do product like research, and seeing what take this element from this one, put these together in my own branded thing and sell it. Like, yeah, that's pretty genius. So I definitely had on my list, I'm going to talk about your wife's business, because I read the thread and I was kind of following along that whole thing. I thought that was just so cool. So did she start it, or did she buy this business? Refresh my memory.
She bought it. She bought it from, you may follow my friend James Camp.
Yep.
His shtick is really more so content sites, but he's done a lot of e-commerce, and it was an off market. Like he had a friend selling this thing. So my wife is half Chinese, and she's been dealing with something called Asian Glow as long as she's been, a shithead college student drinking booze. And I knew James, and I did not know James well enough for him to even know anything about my wife, much less that she was Asian. And so he was like, I told him my wife is looking for something small in e-com to pick up. And he was like, this is like a little bit too small for me. And I'm not sure if I want to attack this niche. And he sends me this thing, and it's this company called Glowless for people that experience Asian glow. And so it's a very serendipitous moment. And she scooped it up from the guy that created it, and has been running with it for, I think, 18 months now. But I think that's a big business. I'm spend a lot of evenings convincing her that it's a lot bigger than she realizes.
That's
or trying to convince her.
Nice. Yeah, James is someone he's on my list, my short list of people I want to reach out to preparing the podcast. I think the whole idea of like buying existing businesses or buying domains and building content around like this, that's a whole, I don't know anything about that whole space. It's very fascinating to me. Is this the first time y'all have bought a business has a start already and then you've made it more successful?
Yeah, well, certainly, I've done a decent amount of M&A type activity at this point with like the cannabis stuff, but definitely her. She was working at Cameo when she bought that, and then left that to work on it more.
And what is that? M&A?
Mergers and acquisitions. Sorry for the cool guy acronym. No. I apologize so much. I hate.
No, you're good.
I hate that. But I've been around a lot of buying and selling and done some of both sides. But that was her or our first, pickup like that. But that was really a perfect scenario where you had this guy it had totally fallen on the back burner. He was almost ignoring it. So she got it for dirt cheap, and that has paid off many times over at this point, especially with that video going viral. But she's working on it like maybe 15 hours a week right now. And I think it'll do like $13,000 in November.
That's awesome. Yeah, you need to. I know it's different times. I know you're focused on short form stuff, but different times I've talked to you about YouTube and telling you maybe you have a YouTube channel. I just don't know about it. But
I haven't.
If you did it right, either you or her, and took that idea of I made one TikTok and made $28,000. That's a killer 8 to 12 minute long video idea, in my opinion.
Right. I want to do more video. I mean, so I'm kind of, this is starting to happen on my Twitter, et cetera, but I'm going to kind of be drinking my own Kool-Aid and just on the topic of if you have a niche that you're interested in and you make content about that, there's a great business to be built. So I'm going to figure out YouTube for sure. I'm trying to figure out video right now. I will make that video at some point here in the next 6 to 12 months. But there's so much. YouTube is tough because you have to actually do video versus like, picking up TikTok and editing in your phone and firing it off. I guess that's not the case, but I know enough to be dangerous, which means that like I'm afflicted by that and that I can't do something simpler, right? Yeah.
It's TikTok, I feel like you can be successful and have the high production quality on TikTok, but TikTok, I feel like, rewards the opposite, rewards the more authentic film with my phone, talk to my phone, do the built-in green screen filter, screen, whatever.
Yep.
And while I have seen lots of people on YouTube be successful with the more DIY, run and gun, low production quality, I think it's rarer on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I think to have a competitive advantage on YouTube, not only is content king and you have to like just have a killer angle or idea or concept for the video first, but you have to back it up with great editing and great production quality to some degree. There's cheat codes on a lot of it.
Yeah.
But even if you know enough to be dangerous, that's still better than 90 or 80% of the people who try the platform.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. So TikTok is the next evolution. And I think that like longer form on YouTube, I don't know. For me, it's all just figuring out it's figuring out what I can make over and over without killing myself. Right. So that's been a big part of TikTok. One of the core things there is like, you need to be posting every day. And so I did a couple of days of that and I was like, holy smokes, like how am I going to do this in a way that's manageable? And I think with YouTube, you could go like every week, but it's still the same thing. It's like, what is the workflow that allows me to actually do this? Because doing it once is probably not going to do much not going to do much for me. I need to be able to do it over and over and over again.
Yeah, that is certainly the tough part. And I have had my own modest success on YouTube with a couple channels, but even still, I struggle with certain things that are bottlenecks. One recommendation is, even for TikTok, if you want, just hire an editor as soon as possible. One of the first things you do for YouTube, certainly hire an editor. But two, it's just actually the writing portion. I'm working on that right now, where if I can just get someone who does research for me and constructs the outline or writes the script for me and gets to like 60% of the way there, and then I put my own opinions, my own spin, my own jokes, my own personality into it. It's just every single week writing a full on, and I'm just doing 1 to 2 a week. Some people do way more than that, and they write them all and stuff. It's just, it's a lot to do.
It's a grind. Yeah. And I think everybody's different with it. Like, for example, I'm probably at my worst when I'm trying to do a script. I really just need an outline. And so, but then in learning TikTok, it's like you start to figure out like what the content needs. And all of a sudden that outline becomes pretty scripty, right? Just in terms of like, okay, my hook, and then and am I pulling that through? And so yeah, I love learning though. And I actually am having a blast failing at TikTok. I'm like 7 weeks in. I think I've got like 940 followers. I've had some videos do well, but my wife hates it. She's like, these are trash. They're so cringy. This isn't you. You can do so much better. But something I know about myself is I just have to be shipping this stuff and figuring it out. Otherwise, nothing will happen. There will be no uploads. So just got to push through it. But on the TikTok note, you do TikTok and figure it out for 30 days, it will absolutely explode for you. I guarantee it. Because you know the technical. If you sit down and go, okay, I'm going to figure this out, and you do at least one post a day for 30 days, like I guarantee you will come out of the other side of that exploding. I guarantee it.
All right, I'm making a note. 30 days of TikTok. It's funny I'm talking to you about YouTube and stuff because I've figured some of that out, and now I'm trying to focus on the shorts and stuff. With the podcast, I have certainly on YouTube, I've noticed a big uptick in views and stuff because we're doing every day that I don't have a podcast full episode coming out, I'm doing clips from the previous show as shorts and stuff, trying to make, it's working great. So yeah, short form, I'm with you. I got to get on it for sure. Let's talk about LinkedIn. What are you doing with LinkedIn? Why do you like LinkedIn? I don't do anything with LinkedIn.
Okay. I'm not sure that, LinkedIn is incredible for industries in particular. I think there's a lot of the like audience builder bros who are doing like really generic, bland, like business content on there that sucks, but like they're able to get momentum because people will eat that up ultimately. But in industry specific circles, it is so powerful, particular because of that supply and demand thing I mentioned before. If you look at like the percentage of people that want to post on social media, the group that also wants to post on social media where your boss and your coworkers are is significantly smaller, right? So there's just a huge supply issue on LinkedIn, and it is, if you show up and give it something, it's going to get seen and people are going to take note. I've barely been posting the last several weeks here, but probably over 4 months, I posted 65 posts. These are like text posts. Some of them a sentence, some of them several sentences, and got 6,000 followers and never had a meeting where people weren't like, oh, I love what you're saying on LinkedIn. I drove 1,000 plus subscribers over to my newsletter, and like literally just became a voice in my industry with 60 posts. Literally 60 posts. That's like the equivalent of 60 tweets. Like not long form. They can be, but they certainly don't need to be. And I did that in the cannabis niche, right? It's completely different from the content that I do elsewhere. I used to do more cannabis on Twitter, but that's a different story. But it is, I don't think I will ever do anything but cannabis on LinkedIn, just because the the circle, the industries that cluster up on there. It's so easy. Yeah.
So yeah, again, I don't know very much about it, but hearing what you're saying reinforces the little bit I have gleaned, which is it's one of those places where this is generally true across all of, content creation. Most people are terrible at making content, generally. And LinkedIn is one of those places where there's even fewer people who are attempting to do it, and there's lots of demand for it. So if you are even a little bit good at crafting that stuff, you can get a lot of traction. Yeah, I clicked on your LinkedIn, and post has 150 likes, 200 likes, 160 likes. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
With
Shooting fish in a
6,000
barrel.
followers.
Yeah.
I'm like, how is he doing this? This is amazing.
Yeah. And I've had nothing go viral. Like I've had some things do well, but I haven't had anything go viral. It's literally the equivalent of like 60 tweets. And
that's crazy.
It's good. It's too easy.
Similar on this topic, but I definitely, this is maybe more of a rant and an observation. I love on Twitter that you've been talking about this idea of building an audience and then launching something afterwards. And so the traditional approach of entrepreneurship, which is go build a business and then scramble to find people who will buy this thing. And I'm obviously very biased and a big believer in the build an audience and then try a bunch of stuff, like, go for it. And I love it. But it's, the rant portion here is that I'm just so annoyed to see that every time you talk about this, you have people who are who just dismiss it. And I don't get it. So can you tell me why you think this build an audience first approach is so powerful?
Yeah. So I think that going into a business, so much of business is just execution. Like, can you get the job done or not? Great. Okay. So if you have that part covered, the next issue is okay, can you get eyeballs on it without breaking the bank? And does anybody give a shit when you do? Mm-hmm. Right. And that costs money, period. Right. So you do all the hard work, which should be pretty linear. You can either execute or you can't. And then you still have this huge unknown. And if I can take that out of the mix with okay, I have 50,000 close friends on Twitter that are interested in what I'm doing. I've now deleted the variable. It's not foolproof. It's not going to be 100%, but the age-old stat of something like 99% of businesses fail. I would bet it goes to 50-50 if you have the built-in audience, just because you take this massive line item off of the P&L. You don't have marketing expense. You will, of course, but you don't have to go and buy those eyeballs. And then you add to that paid eyeballs are so much less impactful than organic eyeballs coming from a community of people that already knows me or and generally trust me. It's literally the definition between push and pull, right? When I go run an ad campaign, I'm just pushing my shit in front of people that it's probably relevant to, versus bringing in people that already know me, that I know are interested in this thing that I'm talking about. The dynamic, it's so far from one-to-one. And then the audience version is free.
Mm-hmm.
They're not equal to begin with, and then one of them is free. I get more and more bullish on it every time I do tweet about it, and you get people that don't get it. It's it's a reminder of how early that is. And I generally think 15 or 20 years from now that most CPG brands especially, but consumer product in general, is going to be dominated by brands that at least have a creator at the seed level, at the founder level.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's just, in my mind, it's a very simple equation. If you spend 6 months to a year building a company, and then you get all your stuff built, then you have this company and this brand, and then you need to build an audience and a following and customers around that. So you start working on that. And then if that company fails, the entire 6 months to a year is lost, as well as the audience. However, if you do the opposite, you for free, organically, put out content, build an audience, and you do that for 6 months to a year, then you come up with a business idea and you launch it and it fails, great, try the next one. Try the next one. And then eventually one of those sticks, audience is still there hanging out with you because they followed along for you, not for that thing.
Yeah. Yep.
It's just so simple in my head. I don't understand why people don't get it.
Yeah, I think that what happens is it's easy to conflate, so I just said like a creator at the seed or at the core of a brand. It's easy to conflate that with like a celebrity endorsement of a brand. And we see those fail all the time because they're trash and they don't matter and the consumer certainly doesn't care. And that's definitely not what we're talking about. We're talking about the spectrum. It's a big spectrum from like creator entrepreneur, like starting a brand, doing a company, to celebrity endorsement. And it doesn't have to be all the way on the like, I'm a born and bred entrepreneur who also is a creator. It doesn't have to be that. But I would say that somebody who has got the chops to be a successful creator, like has, I think, generally what it takes to be an entrepreneur too. You just have to add spreadsheets. And that's another thing that I get pushback on Twitter about is like, you know, just because you can make videos doesn't mean you can like do my spreadsheet. It's like, come on, supply chain isn't that hard, bro. And it certainly isn't. It doesn't take a rocket science to be passable at it. These are execution things. Whereas honestly, I think in a lot of ways, showing up consistently every single day to have creative output is way harder than any operational function of a business at a certain level. And yeah.
The other some of the pushback I will see too on those posts that you do is like, well, an audience doesn't equal clients, doesn't equal customers. Doesn't mean they're all going to buy. It's like, no, but
shit.
some of them will. It's like,
Yeah.
It's like when you advertise and you get people to sign up for your thing, doesn't mean they're all going to be, consumers of the thing.
Yeah. I think, that's coming from people that don't realize that like a typical e-commerce conversion rate is like 1% to 2%, right? So like on the whole of the internet, like 1% to 2% of the people that go to a website are going to actually buy. It's like, so if 2% of these people buy, like we're already in the game. And a lot of these things you end up seeing way higher. There's obviously a big range of what these products are, because we could be anywhere from like a widget to like an info product. But I don't know, there's just a lack of understanding of like what it's very, very not celebrity endorsement. Like that shit sucks. It rarely moves the needle. And that is not what we're talking about there. We're talking about a creator who is deeply connected with an audience and building in public and ultimately launching it. Right. And I think that anybody who's ever done a product or like created a product or a business who's talked through it with their friends and showed their friends and family along the way, and then experience like the inevitable support that comes from those people, it's doing that at scale that is the power of what an audience can do for you. Not to mention the indirect benefits of like having a personal brand on the internet, which is like crazy, whether or not you directly turn it into a dollar.
Yeah, I agree. To switch gears real quick, I would just love to get this perspective, just because I do talk a lot about investing and wealth building and stuff on my channel. And just from your perspective, like how do you approach wealth building, or how do you view wealth creation?
Yeah, I'm totally hands off, run of the mill, think about it almost not at all. So all of my energy goes into things that I can touch or feel or or build. And I'm completely hands off, like auto deposit into Wealthfront. And honestly, probably generally need to get a little bit more, pay a little bit more attention to it. But it's just one of those things, like I don't pay attention to the market. Like, and so anything like that is on a like 30 or 40 year horizon for me. So like why, like it doesn't, I don't think about it. Auto deposit. Yeah.
I like that a lot. More people will be successful if they just did that, if they did that. So, I know you don't think about it, but when you auto deposit, what are you investing in?
The Wealthfront does like you set your risk tolerance. They say if it went down 10%, would you withdraw? Like that's the end of it. And I've got, I've got the 401k and a Roth, but I pretty much like, if you're an adult and you do the things you're supposed to do, that's generally what I do. And then I don't think about it any more than that.
Nice. Do you have any exposure to?
I'm only recently an adult too, by the way. So
aren't we all?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any exposure to crypto?
I sold all my Bitcoin at 1,000.
That's right. We've talked about this before. I forgot.
Right. I had some money in Ohm that is now less money in Ohm.
Yeah.
And I'm just letting that ride. Maybe that'll work out okay. Maybe it'll go all the way to zero. It hasn't been pretty. But not actively, kind of in a similar vein. I mean, I was mining Litecoin 10 years ago. I was mining Litecoin when they were $2. I sold all my Bitcoin to go on my honeymoon, which in retrospect was an expensive honeymoon.
Yep.
But I'm very interested in crypto, particularly I'm particularly interested in what comes out of the other side of Web3 and blockchain after, the current dumpster fire, just because I'm hoping it'll maybe be something useful. I think this whole fiasco is probably going to kill off all the just like bullshit. There's obviously like some of these scammy elements to it, but it's also just like so much hype around nothing that's not actually providing any benefits or creating any value. So I'm interested in what happens there. But I'm not actively paying attention to crypto prices.
So just kind of seeing what develops out of all this, but still have interest in the space. Just no clear winners yet.
Very, very much so. I feel like a little bit of a boomer saying that I'm not paying attention to it. But again, I've built a mining rig. I'm not trading crypto though. Yeah.
I mean, building your own mining rig and mining something, that is far more than most crypto bros ever do. So
yes, fair, right?
Congratulations. I would consider you far more of an OG than most people.
Thank you. I might have to go back. So I had, you probably saw it. I had this thread about so on my honeymoon, I went to Italy, among other places, and I had a thread about how many pizzas I could have bought in Italy based on Bitcoin's current value. And I occasionally updated it. It's probably due for an update with just like all the recent news.
We are down 76% from all-time high. No big deal.
Still a lot of pizzas.
So maybe it's not necessarily investing, and maybe you've kind of already answered this, but I'd love to kind of end with one or two quick questions. And one is, what are the opportunities you see right now? Someone's listening to this and they like a lot of things you're saying, like maybe they want to do something on their own, or maybe they want to kind of try to build something. Like where are the opportunities they should be looking at?
I think that if you are a nerd about something, the opportunity you have to create content, put it on the internet, and find other people that are interested in that, and then build a business off that is unparalleled. TikTok is the fastest way to do it, but it's probably not every platform. It's all kinds of platforms. That applies to SEO too. I used to be an SEO nerd, and like it is shocking to me that in 2022, the amount of SEO opportunities there are out there. So I think right now, TikTok to email to SEO and Google, I guess if you will, anybody that is a nerd about anything and not afraid to put themselves out there can build a hell of a business like in really 6 to 18 months. And I think it's super exciting. And again, to extrapolate that out, I think that those kinds of businesses at the biggest scale are the future of consumer product, period. I think that the Rhode Skincares of the world, which is Hailey Bieber's brand, like I think that is the future of skincare. And in general, especially consumables, but in general consumer product, because if you can have a personal connection at the core of a brand, like that's what every brand marketer has ever wanted on steroids. And I think that's going to manifest probably on a 15, 20 year horizon, but it's happening every single day right now.
Love that. And what are you personally in the next 6 or so months? What are you the most excited about using your time to do?
Content in a similar vein, right? So I've been messing around on Twitter, making content for, like you said, 2 years now. It was actually 2 Novembers ago, by the way. And
how far we've come, Colin.
Yeah, right. That whole thing is, we should touch on that before we wrap. But content and the power of content. So for me, as you've heard, I'm fired up about creator-based brands and building audience and building products. And so I'm going to continue doing content around building products and building audience. And and see where that takes us. I'm partnering with a couple of already very, very established creators to do consumer product brands, and going to be doing more in that space, building products per usual.
Love it. And yeah, circle back to that, or did you want to circle back to the Twitter thing now?
Well, I do, because I think this is at the, I was recollecting on that whole thing, and we all ended up in that group because we all bought.
That's what it was. We all started in the group. That's right.
Yeah, with probably like the lowest common denominator info product that you could buy on Twitter. And I know like you know that dude, so maybe I should. But like it like it's a $30 like how to do tweets PDF, right? Part of that was getting grouped into a group of people who had also just bought it. And it is very interesting when you look back at that group, the people that did it, the people that are still showing up and putting themselves out there on the internet are me, you, SB. Like it's shocking. It worked. And the common denominator isn't the niche. It really isn't. You got Reeves. Shout out to Reeves. Can't remember who else is in that group. But the common denominator is just showing up and doing it relentlessly for 2 years.
Get paid right. He's still on the platform.
Yep. He was like one of the OGs of copywriting before everybody was copywriting.
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's funny to think back on. Yeah. Well, I was in 2 of those because I did a second one of those or something. I don't remember who all those people were, honestly. But yeah. Well, I mean, there certainly is, as cliche as it is, there's something to be said about like persistence and like sticking with it and stuff too in there. Because some people with no results after a while just give up. But
and some of those people, like, they didn't last 2 months, you know?
Yeah.
And but everybody who kept showing up in their own way has been very successful with it.
Yeah. And I think, and to circle back on all the entrepreneurship talk, I think that is a fundamental, at least for me, in entrepreneurship, which is persistence and determination and stuff, while at the same time actually being self-aware and having the ability to iterate and be flexible and go, what I just did sucks. Here's why. Here's how I can make it better. Because a lot of people only hang on to determination and persistence, and they just keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And it's true. It doesn't work. Like, you got to like figure out, you got to keep going. You got to run the marathon, but you got to keep getting better while you run that marathon. Otherwise, you're just not going to end up anywhere.
Yep. And niching down, dare I say, part of my journey in that has been, I've been relatively nicheless in what I've been doing for most of that 2 years. It's just been entrepreneurship, which is way too broad. And so I only 3 or 4 weeks ago kind of have like figured out where I'm taking that, how I'm packaging it for my own brain and for other people into really product and brand building, especially for creators and audience.
Very cool. Very last question, then we'll wrap this thing. And this is a question a lot of people ask on podcast stuff, but I actually am interested in the answer. If you could tell your 20-year-old self something, if you could teach them one thing or like one foundational lesson. Now, given they probably wouldn't listen to you, I know I probably wouldn't listen to a 37-year-old who's like, hey, kid, do this thing. But is there something you look back and like, man, if I'd learned this one thing a little earlier, it would change the game?
I have a very obnoxious approach to things like that, which is like, I think that every stupid thing I did is kind of like this critical step in the path that led me to like right here where we are. That being said, it would just be like, yo, go make content. Yeah. Make content. Right. Like, I spent literally years being like, what if I like had a personal brand on the internet, and like, what if other people thought of me as this thing that I am and that I think of myself as? And it turned out the key to that was just shipping some content, and it would have been very valuable to have done that much earlier on. But again, I have like that wasn't how it is. So it's not how it is. And I'm very much so, I've no regrets kind of scenario without being cheesy. It's just like, the obstacle is the way. This is all a journey, and every stupid thing is a part of that.
Yeah, I love that. I don't think that's cheesy. I feel the same way. I like, I think the things that have happened for the reason, and I'm happy to be where I am today. But at the same time, I will echo that and say that, I sat on this idea of starting my YouTube channel, for my second YouTube channel, for 2 years, building a brand around myself. And I was like, what if, or this might not work out, or, oh, I don't, all these things
Right.
I let sit in front of me. And then I finally did it, and I'm like, well, shit, why didn't I do this 2 years ago?
Yeah.
So
especially
like
for someone who was already doing it. Like, you didn't have the fear of getting in front of a camera or putting yourself out there. That's interesting.
it's so different, It's like, I don't know, it's just a different fear and different, and taking the time, it's a lot of work and all that stuff. But I love, just, if you have that inkling, just get out there and do it. What's the worst that could happen?
Yep.
Well, Colin, this has been a blast. I'm so excited that we got to actually finally chat beyond some text over the Twitterverse. And if you are interested in anything that Colin has to say, I will put all of his links and stuff down in the description, so you can go follow him all different places and check out his TikTok and podcast and newsletter and Twitter and everything. But other than that, man, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks a lot for having me, dude. It's been great.